3 months passed after the USS Horizon returned to Earth with its terrible news. 3 months of fear and preparation. 3 months of nations setting aside old rivalries and working together as one species for the first time in human history. Every factory that could build weapons was building weapons. Every scientist who could contribute was contributing. Every soldier who could fight was training. But deep down, everyone knew it would not be enough. General Ryan Cooper stood in the command center, buried deep beneath the surface of the moon. He was a broad-shouldered man with a shaved head and eyes that had seen too many battles. Screens surrounded him on all sides, showing the positions of Earth's fleet and the latest sensor data from the outer solar system. 300 warships, that was all humanity had. 300 ships, built in desperate haste, crewed by brave men and women who knew they were outmatched. The sensors detected the Council Armada when it was still beyond the orbit of Neptune. 2,000 warships, each one larger and more powerful than anything humanity possessed. They moved through space like a swarm of locusts, blotting out the stars behind them. Fleet Commander Ketharos of the Villani Dominion led the invasion. He was a creature that resembled a spider made of chrome and crystal, with 8 legs and a body that glittered with embedded jewels. To him, this was not a war. It was pest control. The Council had conquered hundreds of species throughout their long history. Not one had ever successfully resisted. Humanity would be no different. He broadcast a message to Earth as his fleet entered the solar system. People of Earth, your defiance ends today. Surrender now, and your species will be permitted to serve the Council. Resist, and you will be destroyed. You have 1 hour to respond. General Cooper watched the message play on the main screen. He turned to his communications officer. Send our response. 2 words. Come and take it. The Battle of Mars was the first major engagement. Earth's fleet gathered around the orbital stations that circled the red planet, trying to protect the mining colonies and research facilities that had taken decades to build. Lieutenant Commander Megan Torres commanded a destroyer called the Defiant. She was young for her rank, only 32, with dark hair pulled back in a tight braid and a scar on her chin from a training accident years ago. She watched the Council ships approach on her tactical display. There were so many of them. For every human ship, there were nearly 7 enemy vessels. The math was simple and brutal. Most of them were going to die today. All hands, this is the captain, she said over the intercom. Her voice was steady, even though her heart was pounding. We all knew this day might come. We all knew the odds. But we are not fighting for glory or conquest. We are fighting for our families, our homes, and our right to exist. Whatever happens today, we make them remember the name humanity. The battle began with a flash of light that could be seen from Earth. Energy beams and missiles crossed the void between the fleets. Human ships exploded, one after another, their shields overwhelmed by the superior firepower of the Council vessels. But they did not run. They did not surrender. They fought with everything they had. Lieutenant Commander Torres pushed her ship into the heart of the enemy formation, her weapons firing continuously. She destroyed 2 Council frigates before a beam weapon tore through her engine room. Warning alarms screamed throughout the ship. The reactor was going critical. She had minutes at most. All hands, abandon ship, she ordered. Then she turned to her helmsman. Everyone else, get to the escape pods. I am staying. Her crew protested, but she silenced them with a look. Someone had to guide the ship, and she would not ask anyone else to die. As the escape pods launched, she aimed the Defiant at the largest Council cruiser she could see, and pushed the engines to maximum. The ship screamed through space, trailing fire and debris. The Council vessel tried to evade, but Torres adjusted her course, refusing to let them escape. The collision was spectacular. The Defiant struck the cruiser amidships, and both vessels disappeared in a ball of nuclear fire. 300 Council soldiers died in that explosion. It was a small victory, but it was a victory. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, humanity had lost nearly half its fleet. 147 ships destroyed. Over 20,000 men and women dead. The orbital stations around Mars were burning ruins. The mining colonies had been evacuated just in time, their populations fleeing to Earth on whatever transports could carry them. But the Council had lost ships too. 53 vessels destroyed, with thousands of their soldiers killed. It was a tiny fraction of their armada, but it was more than they had expected. Fleet Commander Ketharos stared at the casualty reports with something that might have been confusion. No primitive species had ever inflicted such losses on a Council fleet. It was unprecedented. He pushed the thought aside. It did not matter. They still had nearly 2,000 ships. The humans had less than 200. The outcome was inevitable. High Arbiter Zilveth broadcast another message to Earth as the Council fleet established a blockade around the planet. His face filled screens in every city, every home, every shelter where humans huddled together and waited for the end. "Your resistance is admirable, but pointless," he said. "You have seen the power of the Council. You cannot win. Surrender now, and I will show mercy. Continue to fight, and I will reduce your cities to ash and your species to slaves. You have 24 hours. On Earth, people watched the message in silence. Some wept, some prayed, but no one talked about surrender. Deep beneath the Nevada desert, in a facility that did not officially exist, two people were working through the night. Kevin Nakamura was an engineer with messy black hair and circles under his eyes from weeks without proper sleep. Dr. Heather Sullivan was a physicist with red hair turning gray and hands that never stopped moving. They stood before a device that looked like a metal sphere covered in cables and blinking lights. "Will it work?" Kevin asked quietly. Dr. Sullivan looked at the device for a long moment. "In theory, yes. The quantum disruption field should disable any electronic system within range. But we have never tested it on this scale. We have never tested it at all, really." Kevin nodded slowly. "Then I guess we better hope the theory is right, because if it is not, none of us are going to be around to complain about it." They returned to their work, racing against a deadline that the enemy did not even know existed. Somewhere above them, through miles of rock and dirt, the stars shone down on a planet that refused to give up hope. 24 hours. That was all the time humanity had left. But sometimes 24 hours was enough. The blockade around Earth tightened like a noose. Council ships patrolled every orbital path, shooting down any vessel that tried to escape. Supply lines to the outer colonies were cut. The people of Earth were trapped on their own planet, surrounded by an enemy that outnumbered them 10 to 1. Fleet Commander Ketharos expected humanity to crumble. Every species the Council had ever conquered had followed the same pattern. First came defiance, then despair, then surrender. It was simply a matter of waiting for the humans to accept the inevitable. But humanity did not crumble. Instead, they adapted. Commander Derek Santos was a pilot who had survived the Battle of Mars by flying his damaged fighter into an asteroid field and hiding among the rocks for 3 days. He was a short man with a thick beard and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. Before the invasion, he had been considered reckless, even dangerous. Now, his recklessness was exactly what humanity needed. He gathered a small fleet of survivors, pilots and crews who had escaped the destruction of the main fleet. They were flying broken ships held together with spare parts and determination. They had no base, no supply chain, and no hope of reinforcement. They were ghosts haunting the edges of the solar system. And they were very, very angry. The first guerrilla attack came 2 weeks after the blockade began. A council supply convoy was moving through the asteroid belt, carrying fuel and ammunition to the ships surrounding Earth. They were not expecting trouble. The humans were beaten after all. What could they possibly do? Santos and his pilots emerged from the asteroids like wolves from a forest. They struck fast and hard, destroying 3 transport ships before the escort vessels could react. Then they vanished back into the rocks, using the asteroids as cover against the larger council ships that could not follow them. Kethoras received the report with disbelief. It was impossible. The humans should not have any ships left capable of offensive operations. Yet here was proof that they did. He ordered patrols increased throughout the asteroid belt, but the attacks continued. Every few days, another convoy was hit. Another ship was damaged. Another group of council soldiers died in the cold darkness of space. The humans were learning. They captured enemy equipment and studied it, figuring out how it worked and how to turn it against its creators. They hacked into council communication networks, spreading false information and creating chaos. They found weaknesses in the alien technology that the council had never bothered to fix because no one had ever challenged them before. On Earth, the resistance took a different form. General Cooper coordinated a global defense network, preparing for the ground invasion that everyone knew was coming. Factories worked day and night, producing weapons and vehicles and equipment. Scientists studied captured alien technology, looking for any advantage they could find. Dr. Heather Sullivan barely slept anymore. She and Kevin Nakamura had made a breakthrough with the quantum disruption device, but there were still problems to solve. The weapon worked, but its range was limited. They needed to get it close to the enemy fleet, and that meant finding a way past the blockade. Kevin came up with the solution. "Cargo ships," he said one morning, his eyes bright with exhaustion and inspiration. "The Council is not scanning civilian vessels carefully. They consider them beneath notice. We modify a few cargo ships, hide the weapon inside, and fly it right into the middle of their fleet." Dr. Sullivan frowned. The crew would be on a suicide mission. The moment the weapon activates, every system on their ship will fail too. "I know," Kevin said quietly, "but I think there will be volunteers." He was right. When word spread about what was needed, hundreds of people stepped forward. Not soldiers, but ordinary civilians. Teachers and farmers and factory workers who wanted to do something, anything to help save their world. They knew they might not come back. They volunteered anyway. While the scientists worked on the weapon, Ambassador Samantha Green was fighting a different kind of war. She had been studying the Council's structure, looking for cracks in their alliance. The 12 elder races had ruled together for 50,000 years, but that did not mean they were united. Some species had been conquered and forced to join. Others resented the arrogance of the Dravari, who considered themselves superior to everyone else. Green made contact with the Netherarian Collective, a species of tall, slender beings with silver skin and mournful eyes. They had been subjugated by the Council 3,000 years ago, and had never forgotten their lost freedom. Their representative, a female named Velani, spoke with Green through a hidden communication channel that the Council did not know existed. "Why should we help you?" Velani asked. Her voice was soft, but carried centuries of pain. "If we rise up and fail, the Council will destroy us. We have seen it happen to others." Green leaned forward, her eyes intense. "Because this time is different. Humanity will not fall. We will find a way to win, and when we do, we will help you. We will help all the species the Council has enslaved. I give you my word." Velani was silent for a long moment. "Your species is very young. You do not understand what you are promising. Maybe not, Green admitted. But I know what the Council did to my people. I watched them murder 8,000 innocent civilians without a second thought. They see us as insects, as things to be used and discarded. I will not let that stand. And I do not believe you want to let it stand either. The Netharian studied the human ambassador with ancient eyes. Then, slowly, she nodded. We will watch. If you can truly hurt the Council, if you can make them bleed, we will consider your offer. But you must prove yourselves first. We will, Green said. I promise you, we will. Back in the asteroid belt, Commander Santos was proving it every day. His small fleet had grown as more survivors joined him, drawn by rumors of a commander who refused to give up. They were called the Ghosts of Mars now, named after the battle where so many of their friends had died. They struck without warning and disappeared without a trace, driving Ketharos to fury. The fleet commander could not understand it. These humans should have been easy to crush. They were primitive, outnumbered, outgunned. Yet they kept fighting. They kept adapting. They kept finding new ways to cause problems. High Arbiter Zilveth received reports of unrest spreading through Council territory. Subjugated species were whispering about the humans who defied the elder races. Some were asking questions that had not been asked in thousands of years. If the humans could resist, why could they not do the same? For the first time in his long life, Zilveth felt something he did not recognize. It took him a moment to identify it. It was doubt. The humans were not supposed to be a threat. They were supposed to be a minor nuisance, dealt with in a few weeks, and then forgotten. Instead, they had become something far more dangerous. They had become a symbol of hope. The plan was called Operation Homecoming. It was desperate, dangerous, and probably insane. General Cooper presented it to the surviving military leaders in the Lunar Command Center, his voice calm even as he described what they were about to attempt. We cannot win a direct fight, he said. We have known that from the beginning. The Council has too many ships, too much firepower. If we try to meet them head-on, they will destroy us. So we are not going to meet them head-on. We are going to cheat. The plan had 3 parts. The first was a decoy. Captain Nathan Blake would lead what remained of Earth's main fleet in a direct assault on the Council blockade near Jupiter's moons. It would look like a final, desperate attempt to break through enemy lines. The Council would send the bulk of their forces to crush it. The second part was the infiltration. Commander Santos and a small team would use a captured Council vessel to sneak past enemy lines. Their target was the Eternal Judgment, the massive dreadnought that served as the mobile command station for the entire invasion fleet. High Arbiter Zilveth himself was aboard that ship. The third part was the weapon. Dr. Sullivan's quantum disruption device, hidden inside the captured vessel, would be detonated at the heart of the enemy fleet. If the theory was correct, it would disable every Council ship within 100,000 kilometers. If the theory was wrong, the team would die for nothing. Captain Blake was an older man with white hair and a face lined by decades of service. He had lost his son at the Battle of Mars, watching helplessly as the young man's ship was torn apart by Council weapons. When General Cooper asked if he would lead the decoy assault, Blake did not hesitate. "My boy died fighting for Earth," he said quietly. "I can do no less." His fleet launched from hidden bases throughout the solar system, gathering into a formation that the Council sensors could easily detect. They wanted to be seen. They wanted the enemy to think this was humanity's last stand. Fleet Commander Ketharos took the bait. He ordered 1,500 ships to intercept the human fleet, leaving only 500 vessels to maintain the blockade around Earth. It was more than enough, he believed. The humans had perhaps 150 ships remaining. They would be annihilated within hours. The battle began near Europa, Jupiter's icy moon. Human ships charged directly at the Council formation, their weapons blazing. It was brave and foolish, and exactly what Ketharos expected. He watched the tactical display with satisfaction as human ships began to explode, one after another. He was trying to buy time. Meanwhile, Commander Santos guided the captured Council vessel through the chaos of battle. Dr. Sullivan sat beside him in the alien cockpit, her hands steady as she monitored the quantum disruption device. Behind them, a team of 12 soldiers prepared for whatever lay ahead. Among them was Sergeant Ashley Carter, a woman with short blonde hair and eyes that had seen too much death. She had lost her entire family when the colony ships were destroyed. She had nothing left except the mission. "Approaching the Eternal Judgment," Santos reported. "They are hailing us, requesting identification codes." Kevin Nakamura's voice crackled through the communication system from Earth, where he was monitoring the operation remotely. "Transmitting codes now. These were pulled from Council databases during our hack last month. They should still be valid." There was a long, terrible moment of silence. Then the Council ship accepted the codes and granted them permission to dock. The team moved quickly through the alien corridors, their weapons ready. The inside of the Eternal Judgment was vast and strange, filled with technology that humanity could barely understand. Council soldiers patrolled the hallways, their weapons humming with deadly energy. Santos led the team through maintenance tunnels and service passages, avoiding contact whenever possible. But they could not avoid it forever. The firefight started near the reactor section, when a Council patrol spotted them and opened fire. Energy beams scorched the walls as both sides exchanged shots. 2 human soldiers fell in the first seconds, their bodies smoking from the alien weapons. Sergeant Carter grabbed a fallen Council rifle and used it to cut down 3 enemies, her face twisted with grim determination. "Go!" she shouted at Santos and Sullivan. "I will hold them here. Get to the reactor." Santos hesitated for just a moment. Then he nodded and ran, pulling Sullivan along with him. Behind them, Carter took up position behind a support pillar and began firing methodically, making every shot count. More Council soldiers came, drawn by the sounds of combat. She knew she could not hold them forever. She just needed to hold them long enough. Santos and Sullivan reached the reactor core, a massive chamber filled with pulsing energy and alien machinery. Sullivan immediately began working on the quantum disruption device, connecting it to the ship's power grid to amplify its effect. "How long?" Santos asked, watching the door with his weapon raised. 2 minutes, Sullivan replied. Her hands were shaking now, but her voice was steady. "Maybe 3. Council soldiers burst through the door. Santos fired, dropping 2 of them before the others took cover. More were coming. He could hear them in the corridors, their strange voices calling to each other, in languages no human could understand. Kevin's voice came through the communication system, urgent and afraid. "You have hostiles converging on your position from 3 directions. You need to move faster." "Working on it," Sullivan snapped. She connected the final cable and stepped back. The device began to hum, a sound that seemed to vibrate in the bones. "It is ready," setting the timer for 60 seconds. Santos looked at her. "That is not enough time to get out." "I know," she said simply, "but it is what we have." For a moment neither of them moved. Then Santos smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes for the first time in months. "Well then, let us make it count." He activated the timer. The device began its countdown, numbers flickering on the small display. They turned to face the door together, weapons raised, as Council soldiers poured into the chamber. The last 60 seconds of their lives were spent fighting. They took down enemy after enemy, standing back to back in the glow of the alien reactor. When Santos fell, hit by 3 beams at once, Sullivan kept firing. When her weapon ran dry, she picked up his. At 0, the device activated. A wave of quantum energy exploded outward from the Eternal Judgment, spreading at the speed of light. Every electronic system within 100,000 kilometers simply stopped working. Lights went dark, engines died, weapons fell silent. 500 Council ships, including their flagship, became dead metal, drifting in the void. High Arbiter Zylveth stood in the darkness of his command center, surrounded by the bodies of his officers who had been killed in the firefight. He could not understand what had happened. One moment, his ship had been the most powerful vessel in the galaxy. The next, it was a tomb. He looked out the viewport at the stars and saw human ships approaching. They were small and battered, survivors of the decoy fleet that had somehow managed to escape. They were coming to finish what the infiltration team had started. For the first time in his ancient life, Zylveth felt true fear. The humans had done the impossible, and now everything was about to change. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The humans had crippled the Council's invasion fleet. 500 warships disabled in a single moment, including the flagship of High Arbiter Zylveth himself. It was unprecedented. It was impossible. And yet it had happened. The remaining Council ships fled. Fleet Commander Ketharos, who had been so confident of victory just hours before, ordered a full retreat. His forces scattered in every direction, racing back to Council territory before the humans could use their mysterious weapon again. The blockade around Earth collapsed overnight. General Cooper stood in the command center and watched the enemy ships disappear from the sensor displays. Around him, his officers were cheering, hugging each other, some of them crying with relief. They had won, against all odds, against an enemy that had never been defeated in 50,000 years. Humanity had won. But Cooper did not cheer. He was thinking about the people who had made this victory possible. Commander Santos and Dr. Sullivan, who had sacrificed themselves to activate the weapon. Sergeant Carter, who had held off an entire squad of Council soldiers to buy them time. Captain Blake and the crews of the decoy fleet, many of whom had died drawing the enemy away from the real target. Lieutenant Commander Torres, who had rammed her ship into a Council cruiser during the Battle of Mars. So many names, so many lives. He picked up the microphone and broadcast a message to Earth and every human settlement in the solar system. This is General Cooper. The enemy is retreating. The blockade is broken. We have won this battle. He paused, his voice heavy with emotion. But we must remember those who gave everything to make this possible. Their sacrifice will never be forgotten. Today, we honor them, and we make sure that nothing like this ever happens again. On Earth, people poured into the streets. In every city, on every continent, humans celebrated their survival. They had been told they were primitive and worthless. They had been told they could not win. They had been told to surrender or die. And they had answered with defiance, courage, and a weapon that the oldest civilizations in the galaxy had never imagined. But the war was not truly over. High Arbiter Zylveth was still alive, still in command of the Council's vast resources. And the quantum disruption device was a secret that could not be kept forever. Eventually, the Council would find a way to counter it. Humanity needed allies. Ambassador Samantha Green traveled to a neutral space station at the edge of Council territory, where representatives of a dozen subjugated species had gathered in secret. The Nefarians were there, along with beings from worlds that humans had never heard of. They had all come for the same reason. They had seen what humanity had done, and they wanted to know if the stories were true. Green stood before them, a single human woman, facing creatures that had lived for centuries, that came from civilizations older than human history. She was not intimidated. She had watched the Council murder 8,000 innocent people. She had helped plan the counterattack that had brought them to their knees. She had nothing left to fear. "You have heard what happened," she said. "You know that the Council can be hurt. You know that they are not invincible. For 50,000 years, they have told you that resistance is futile, that you must accept your place as servants of the elder races. They lied. We are living proof that they lied. Velani of the Netharian Collective stepped forward. What do you propose, Ambassador? Freedom, Green said simply. For all of us. Humanity does not want to rule the galaxy. We do not want to replace the Council with our own empire. We want a community of equals, where every species has a voice and no one is forced to bow before another. There was murmuring among the assembled representatives. This was dangerous talk. If the Council discovered this meeting, they would all be executed for treason. The Council still has thousands of ships, another representative pointed out. They control hundreds of worlds. How can we possibly defeat them? Green smiled. The same way humanity did, by refusing to give up, by working together, by being smarter and braver and more determined than they ever expected. The Council has grown arrogant and complacent. They have forgotten what it means to fight against a people who have nothing to lose. 2 months later, the Netharian Collective rose up against their council overseers. They were followed by the Velani Resistance, a faction within Fleet Commander Ketheros's own species who had grown tired of endless wars. Then came the Drossian Alliance, the Kelith Free State, and a dozen other groups who saw their chance to break free. The Galactic Council's empire began to fracture. Ships that should have been reinforcing the core worlds were instead fighting rebellions on 100 fronts. The 12 elder races, who had ruled together for so long, began to argue among themselves about how to respond. High Arbiter Zilveth requested a ceasefire. The meeting took place on a neutral station, the same one where Green had gathered the subjugated species just months before. Zilveth sat across from the human ambassador, his 4 eyes dull with exhaustion and defeat. He looked old now, in a way he had not looked before. The arrogance was gone from his voice. You have won, he said quietly. I do not know how, but you have won. Name your terms. Green did not gloat. She did not remind him of the 8,000 civilians he had murdered. She did not speak of the human soldiers who had died fighting his invasion. There would be time for that later, in courts and tribunals where the Council would answer for their crimes. The Council will recognize Earth's sovereignty, she said. All subjugated species will be released from their obligations. A new governing body will be formed, one where every species has an equal voice. And those responsible for atrocities against civilian populations will face justice. Zilveth closed his 4 eyes. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he nodded slowly. Agreed. 1 year later, the Galactic Assembly held its first meeting. Representatives from over 50 species gathered in a great hall built on neutral ground, including humans, Netharians, Velani, and even some members of the elder races who had supported the reforms. It was a diverse and sometimes chaotic group, but they shared a common purpose, to build something better than what had come before. Admiral Daniel Harris, formerly Captain Harris of the USS Horizon, stood before the assembly. His hair was completely gray now, and there were new lines on his face, carved by the weight of command and the losses he had witnessed. But his eyes were still calm, still hopeful. Humanity came to the stars seeking friends, he said. We found enemies instead. We were told we were primitive, worthless, unworthy of standing among the elder races. We were attacked without provocation, our people murdered, our freedom threatened. He paused, looking out at the assembled representatives. But we did not break. We did not surrender. We fought back, not for conquest or revenge, but for our right to exist. And we discovered something important along the way. We discovered that we were not alone. There were others who shared our dreams of freedom, who had been waiting for someone to show them that resistance was possible. He smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. Today, We stand together as equals, not as masters and servants, not as conquerors and conquered, but as partners in a new galactic community. We have all paid a terrible price to reach this moment. Let us honor that sacrifice by building something worthy of it." The assembly erupted in applause, a sound that echoed through the hall and out into the stars beyond. Somewhere in that crowd, Ambassador Green wiped tears from her eyes. Kevin Nakamura, who had been awarded humanity's highest honors for his work on the quantum disruption device, stood quietly beside her. He was thinking about Dr. Sullivan and Commander Santos, who should have been here to see this. The universe had changed forever. The old order had fallen, and a new one was rising in its place. There would be challenges and conflicts and disagreements. But for the first time in 50,000 years, the galaxy had hope. And at the center of it all was a small blue planet called Earth, home to a species that had refused to be broken, a species that had looked at the impossible and said, "Watch us." Humanity had arrived, and the universe would never be the same. The year was 2147. And humanity had finally done what dreamers had hoped for centuries. They had built ships that could travel faster than light. The stars were no longer distant points of light in the night sky. They were destinations. The USS Horizon was the pride of Earth's fleet. It was not a warship, but a vessel of peace, carrying diplomats and scientists who wanted nothing more than to meet other intelligent life. Captain Daniel Harris stood on the bridge and watched the swirling colors of hyperspace through the main viewport. He was a tall man with gray hair at his temples and calm eyes that had seen many difficult situations. He had served in the military for 30 years before taking this assignment, but he believed this mission would be different. This was not about war. This was about hope. Ambassador Samantha Green sat in the observation lounge, reviewing her notes for the 100th time. She had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. First contact with alien life. She had practiced speeches in dozens of languages, studied every theory about how alien civilizations might think, and prepared gifts that represented the best of human culture. She was nervous, but excited. Humanity was about to take its first real step into the galactic community. The moment came sooner than anyone expected. The Horizon dropped out of hyperspace near a star system called Kepler 442, and the sensors immediately detected something massive. Captain Harris leaned forward in his chair as the image appeared on the main screen. It was a fleet, hundreds of enormous ships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. They hung in space like mountains of metal and light. "Open a channel," Harris ordered. "All frequencies. Broadcast our peaceful intentions." The communications officer, a young woman named Lieutenant Carla Webb, worked quickly at her station. "Channel open, sir." Ambassador Green hurried to the bridge. She took a deep breath and spoke into the microphone. "This is Ambassador Samantha Green of the planet Earth. We come in peace. We wish to establish friendly relations with all intelligent species. Please respond." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then the main screen flickered, and an alien face appeared. It was not human. The creature had pale blue skin, 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, and a mouth that seemed to have too many teeth. It wore elaborate robes covered in symbols that might have been religious or military. "I am High Arbiter Zilveth of the Dravari species," the alien said. Its voice was cold and carried a tone of absolute authority. "I speak for the Galactic Council, the governing body of the 12 elder races who have ruled this region of space for 50,000 years. Ambassador Green smiled warmly. "High Arbiter, it is an honor to meet you. Humanity has long dreamed of this moment. We hope to learn from your civilization and share what we have to offer." Zilveth's 4 eyes blinked slowly, 1 pair at a time. "You misunderstand your position, human. The Council has observed your species. You are primitive, Your technology is crude. Your civilization is barely 10,000 years old. You are not worthy of galactic citizenship. The smile faded from Green's face. I see. Then what do you propose? Earth will surrender its sovereignty to the Council, Zilveth said, as if discussing something as simple as the weather. Your species will become a vassal state. You will provide resources and labor to the elder races. In return, you will be permitted to exist under our protection. Captain Harris stepped forward. High Arbiter, I mean no disrespect, but humanity will not surrender its freedom. We have fought too hard and come too far to give up everything we are. The alien's expression did not change, but something cold entered its voice. This is not a negotiation, human. This is how things are done. Every species the Council has encountered has accepted these terms. Those who refuse face consequences. Ambassador Green held up her hands in a calming gesture. Perhaps we can discuss this further. There must be a middle ground where both sides can benefit. We are willing to talk for as long as it takes. Zilveth made a sound that might have been laughter. There is nothing to discuss. You have been given the Council's terms. You will accept them, or you will be made to accept them. Captain Harris looked at Ambassador Green. She gave him a small nod. He turned back to the screen. High Arbiter, I must respectfully decline your offer. Earth will remain free. The alien's 4 eyes narrowed. So be it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Lieutenant Webb's voice cut through the silence, filled with horror. Captain, 2 of our colony ships just dropped out of hyperspace behind us. They were following our route. The alien fleet is moving toward them. Harris spun around. Get them on the radio. Tell them to jump back to hyperspace immediately. But it was already too late. On the long-range sensors, they watched as beams of brilliant energy lanced out from the Council ships. The 2 colony vessels, carrying over 8,000 men, women, and children, disappeared in blossoms of fire. There was no warning, no chance to surrender, no mercy. Ambassador Green stood frozen, her hand pressed against the viewport glass. Tears ran down her face as she watched the debris scatter into the void. Those ships had carried families, teachers, farmers, and children who had dreamed of starting new lives on distant worlds. Now they were gone, murdered in an instant by creatures who saw humanity as nothing more than insects. Get us out of here, Harris said quietly. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. Maximum speed back to Earth. They need to know what's coming. As the horizon turned and fled into hyperspace, Ambassador Green wiped her tears and made a promise, not to herself, not to the captain, but to the 8,000 souls who had just been erased from existence. Earth would not forget this. Earth would not forgive this. And one day, Earth would make them pay. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. When they arrived, the news spread across the planet within hours. For the first time in over a century, humanity was united by a single emotion. It was not fear, though fear was certainly present. It was not despair, though many felt despair. It was anger. A cold, quiet, burning anger that settled into the heart of every human being who heard the story. The Galactic Council had made a terrible mistake. They had looked at humanity and seen a weak, primitive species that would bow before their power. They had not understood what humans were capable of when pushed to the edge. They had not understood that humanity had spent its entire history fighting against impossible odds and refusing to surrender. They would learn.